Your Creative Push, episode 288.
It sucks that you second guess everything you do and you look at your work and think, that didn't go as planned. I had it different in my mind and I suck and I'm not good enough. I will never be good enough and blah, blah, blah. But basically, that's just your mind telling you stuff that isn't true.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Iris Compiet. Iris is an artist and illustrator living and working in the Netherlands, and she just launched and completed a very, very successful Kickstarter to publish her beautiful book, Faeries of the Faultlines. But she comes on the show today to talk about her experience of going to school in the Netherlands and working as a graphic designer for 16 years, and how and why she decided to finally go full-time as an illustrator. Iris talks about dealing with the imposter syndrome and the fact that we all have it and we should all be talking about it much more. Iris also talks about how she handled her battle with carpal tunnel syndrome, and she talks about doing the hashtag Mermay and hashtag JuneFay challenges and how that enabled her to grow her Instagram followers from 1,000 to now over 50,000. She talks about how she treats her sketchbook like a playground and how she always saves her old ones so that she can go back and get new ideas. But not only treating your sketchbook like a playground, but also sharing those rough drafts, those sketches, and those mistakes with your audience. And finally, Iris talks about her Kickstarter journey and the triumph of Faeries of the Faultlines and some of the pitfalls that she encountered along the way. This was one of those gems, one of these wonderful conversations that really inspired me in partaking in the interview, as well as listening back and editing it and preparing it for you all. So I know that you are going to be very inspired by my conversation with Iris Compiet. Enjoy. Iris, welcome to Your Creative Push.
Thank you, young man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and we've been back and forth trying to schedule this, and we both kind of been dealing with different ailments, so it's just a pleasure to finally get connect with you.
Yeah, thank you. The feeling is mutual, and it's been a long time coming, but finally we did it. We managed.
Yay! Well, I always like to give my guests an opportunity at the beginning to kind of give a brief bio, sort of how you got to the point you are today, creatively speaking.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing. Obviously, like so many other artists, I've been doing art since I was really young. At the age of 7, I knew I wanted to be an illustrator. I went to art school in the Netherlands, but I studied graphic design and worked as a graphic designer for 16 years. And in my part-time, that was a part-time job. And on the side, I did illustration and built on my career, worked on establishing my name and just doing stuff I love doing. And just since 2017, last year, I am a full-time artist illustrator. And that was probably made possible due to a very successful Kickstarter I launched in 2017, which is Faeries of the Faultlines. It's my own book about fairies, and that just blew up. That was such a huge success, and basically that launched my career, like it torpedoed it, actually. And Brian Froud, the creator of Labyrinth, together with Jim Hansen and Dark Crystal, and obviously Faeries with Alan Lee, he wrote the introduction to my book, so that's also a very big thing for me. And people like Guillermo del Toro supported the campaign, Tony DiTalizzi. It's been a really awfully awesome adventure this past year. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's it. And I'm probably forgetting a lot because I've done so much since last year that it's insane. Actually, it's still weird to be living the life I always wanted to do.
Right. I'm sure we will fill in the gaps, but I always like getting artists or creative people on the show that have just kind of made a big change towards the direction of their creativity and leaving their not necessarily lesser job, but leaving the job that they maybe didn't like as much or didn't fulfill them as much. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that transition, what it was like to finally make that decision to go full time.
Oh, I'd love to talk about it. I talk about this very often because it's very important. I am now 39, and all of a sudden, people are always thinking, "Oh, you need to be successful before a certain age," and I think that's just like a load of BS, to be honest, because there's never a right time and there's never a wrong time to do anything. I've seen people be very successful at the age of 50, and I've seen people be very successful at the age of 20. So there's no real set time when you can be successful in your career. And in my case, I decided to study graphic design and be a graphic designer because it was a job I liked. I was still thinking creatively. I got into the habit of working with deadlines. I got to learn all the important computer programs, and I just had a solid job that provided me with enough financial stability to pay my bills and still work on projects on the side that I enjoyed doing. So I didn't have to take on jobs that I took on for money alone. I had the opportunity and the luxury to say no to jobs I didn't like because I wasn't dependent on the income. So that meant I could just gradually and slowly, of course, because you can only do so much in the evening and in the weekends. But it's been a good. I do not regret the way I've done it because it's been a steady base and it's been a steady way of building on my career and just building my name. Just last year, I was actually fed up with my day job. I had cut down in hours as much as I could, and I found myself in the opportunity to just say, hey, this is it. I'm just going to quit. And I still remember the day I quit my day job. I came back from ILlustraCon in the United States. It's a big convention for imaginative realism. And I had this amazing convention, and basically it was so successful, had so much fun, that I decided that I would quit my job as soon as I got back home. And I made it I told everybody at the convention that, hey, on Monday I'm going to quit my day job just because I want to be held accountable for I was actually going to do it. Because sometimes you think you're going to do it, and then it's so scary to quit a full-time, a part-time steady job that has a steady paycheck. You know what you're going to get each and every month. You've got your insurance sorted, everything sorted. And basically you're giving that up. And that's so very scary because society teaches you that you should not do that because that's irresponsible or whatever. You have bills to pay, you have responsibilities. And when you quit your day job, you basically don't know where your next paycheck is coming from. But in my case, it wasn't a leap of faith entirely. I knew I had a couple jobs lined up. I knew I had a couple of jobs that paid well to see me through a couple of months. And I was like, there's never a right time. Let's just do it. And if I fail, I can always go back. So I think that's it, actually.
Yeah, it seems like a LuxCon is a turning point for many of my guests, actually. Like Noah Bradley had made a big decision there too. So anybody that's thinking of making a big change, go to a LuxCon.
That's the place to be. That's absolutely the place to be. For me, the whole idea of doing art full-time started at LuxCon as well. In 2011 was my first time visiting, and I'm coming from the Netherlands, so this is a huge investment for traveling there. It's just insane the amount of cost that is. I have to pay to actually go to the US to exhibit or show my work or just talk with people. But I did it, and I felt so at home. It was like this one big happy family of all these people that I knew from online and people I looked up to. And they were there and they saw me as their equal, which is amazing. And it gives you this extra boost of, hey, maybe I can actually do this. Maybe this is just, I can do this. I'm no longer a fake. I'm not a fraud. I am an artist. And well, in 2017, I took that leap. And here we are now. In 2011, I was in the showcase, and I've been in the main show twice now. And this year, in 2018, I'm going to be in the main show again as a main show artist. This time, fully on my own account, with enough votes by the jury to be in there. So it's like, I did it in just like 6 years, 5 years, 6 years. So it's pretty awesome, actually.
It's very awesome, yeah. And you just touched on something, too, by talking about, like, the fraud thing. And I've heard you talk about this before with the imposter syndrome. So is that something you still deal with even at this point?
Yeah, it's. I think it's something that most people deal with. And I've seen very experienced artists talk about it as well. And they're like, yeah, I still have that. And I think it's very important to talk about it as well and just acknowledge that it is there. It's not a problem that it's there. Just know how to deal with it. We all have it in some degree, I think. There's some people that don't. They say, I don't have it. I know what I'm capable of. And hey, more power to them. Awesome. I'm very happy you don't have to deal with it because it sucks. It sucks that you second guess everything you do and you look at your work and think, that didn't go as planned. I had it different in my mind and I suck and I'm not good enough. I will never be good enough and blah, blah, blah. But basically that's just your mind telling you stuff that isn't true. And I always tell people like, hey, treat them, they're demons. Treat them like, give them a name and just make them your pets. They are your pets. They are there. Just give them a treat. Have them, let them beat them and just go on with it. Because of course, sometimes you suck, sometimes you don't. It's part of who you are as an artist, I guess. And it's sometimes very difficult, but it's not always impossible to overcome. And I think if you just talk about it, it becomes easier to deal with it because you're not the only one dealing with it. And you can learn from each other how other people deal with it. So it gets easier, I think. I spend less time thinking I'm a fraud or thinking I'm awful than I used to. I used to do days on end, like, I can't do this. I would just tear up pieces and just think, I'm going to do something else entirely. I'm going to take care of cats or something, which is awesome as well. But I need to do this. I need to create art and I need to do it. And it's not always going to be awesome. It's not going to be always going to be the best. But that really doesn't matter because I didn't set out to be the best. I don't want to be the best. I don't have to be the best. I just have to be the best or the best Iris I can be.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to take care of cats and take care of dogs, but you got to take care of your own resistances, your own imposter syndromes, your own little pets. Make them your own little pets and take care of them.
Yeah.
Well, going along with that, I also heard you talk about in an interview talking about compliments from your niece saying that, you're famous, like, about your art, and how you say, I'm not famous, but, like, in my eyes, like, you are kind of famous. Like, you have, like, 50,000 followers, you post something on Instagram, you get 2,000 or 3,000 likes,
It still baffles me, though.
Right, right, I know. Well, so my question is like, what is famous? Like, is that something just like imposter syndrome that's like never gonna go away? Like, it's not never like this like goal that you can reach.
I don't know. I think maybe fame is something that is different for each person. I don't think I'm famous. I just do what I love doing and I share that with the world. I love sharing that with everybody else. And it's awesome to see how people react to that. If that's fame, that's cool. If it's fame that you inspire people, that's the best thing ever. I'm not better than anybody else. Maybe I'm lucky, more lucky than others. I'm not sure.
Mm.
But for me, fame is it's such a weird word. Fame and fans and stuff like that. It's just everybody's just friends. You know, they're all. You can ask me anything. There are limits, of course, to what I'll answer. I've had some weird requests, and that's a sure way to get blocked, to be honest. But basically, I love inspiring people. For me, I want to be a person that can inspire other people to create and to tell stories, to tell their stories, their own stories, to find the courage to create without limitations or without imposter syndrome. If that's fame, that's the fame I'll take. That's the fame I want. I want to inspire. That's the most important thing, I guess. And yeah, of course, I'd love to make a living out of this, just enough to live comfortable and be able to buy new art materials, which is actually, for me, that's the live comfortable part. Buy art materials. That's the most important thing, I guess.
Right, the basic needs.
Basic needs, art materials, paper, pencils, brushes, watercolor, awesome, oil paints, and basically anything I want to touch.
Right. Well, let's get into your art itself, because you take inspiration from a lot of different places. I was wondering, where did that start? Where did that come from? And then how did you kind of meld that into your art?
Yeah, well, I am the third child in my family. I've got two older brothers, way older than I am, so I was basically always playing alone. So for me, storytelling and fairy tales was a big thing. And my inspiration comes from fairy tales, nature, of course, everything around me. I live in the Netherlands, which is Europe, which is filled with all these ancient building stories, art. It's very rich here in that respect. So there's this huge pile of inspiration just around the corner for me. And basically, I love discovering new artists, new and old artists actually, and see if I can learn from them and put it into my own art. And the funny thing is, at the age of 7, I knew I wanted to do illustration. I picked up Faeries from Brian Froud and Alan Lee, the book from the library. And that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to paint things like that from fairy tales, but different, not very nice or whatever. It's just raw. I have to admit that at the age of 20, I guess, when I was finally doing illustration again, I was a fantasy illustrator. But people always kept asking me, "Oh, so you paint fairies?" And I always said, "No, I don't paint fairies unless they're eaten by trolls or something." Because I had grown so out of touch with that world I loved as a child. Because the fairies I saw in a popular fantasy culture weren't the ones I really liked. They were too cute, too glittery, too pink, which is awesome if you love that. But for me, that I felt I needed some grit, I needed some scariness to it, and I love ghost stories, things like that. So I couldn't find that anymore. in 2016, I started doing these daily sketches for Instagram, hashtags Junefei and Mermay. Well, Mermay is coming up in May. I hope everybody's going to join me in painting or drawing a mermaid a day. And next month, in June, it's Junefei. And for me, Junefei launched my fairy world, actually. And I did a fairy a day. And I developed these stories of a world and fairies that were like nature, raw and sometimes ugly, good and evil all in once. Basically, people were emailing me to tell me that I gave them their childhood back with those images and those stories. And that gave me so much, like, that's worth more than sending me a check of €1,000. You can still send me a check of €1,000. I won't object. But hey, it's so awesome that a grown-up person is taking the time to reach out to you and tell you that you gave them their childhood back. You gave them back something they had lost. And at that moment, I figured, like, hey, this is something I need to put out into the world. And it resulted in this book called Faeries of the Faultlines, which is actually going to print next week. It's awesome. And I think all these influences and inspirations I had as a child are finally finding their way into this world that's so immense and big that I'm painting fairies now. But the fairies are the ones that eat things.
Right.
Instead of being eaten. Well, they're being eaten as well, but you get the drift. It's back to the roots. It's back to folklore, and basically, I'd love to give people the opportunity back to let their fantasies and imagination do the work again. See the ordinary world that's around us with extraordinary eyes. So a stone is no longer a stone, but can be anything you want.
Right. Well, I like that idea of, well, your art is at the core, like your kind of thesis statement is that you want to touch on that sense of wonder.
Yeah.
And I love that idea of the art growing with you. Like, even that, like, it's not the cutesy little fairies, like the cute things, but like it matures with you. And then as such, it can mature with your audience as well.
Yeah, it grows, it evolves, and it's still evolving. And people ask me what's the next thing, and I'm like, I don't know. We'll see what happens. And it's one big adventure, which I absolutely love. That this is just such a big adventure and anything is possible. I feel a bit like Peter Pan in this. Anything is possible if you just want it.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to talk about that hashtag Mermay and Junefei. Did I say those right?
Yeah, and there's more. There's Smogust for August. You draw dragons. There's so many more, and it's awesome.
That's so cool. Yeah, and I love the idea of promoting, a drawing a day or something a day, like some kind of achievable goal to force you to do something every single day for a month or a year. So what did that do for you? And what has it continued to do as you continue to do these kind of challenges?
Well, first off, back in 2016, I was having problems with my arm. I was overworked due to my day job as a graphic designer, and I couldn't hold a pencil for longer than 10 minutes.
Was it carpal tunnel? Or?
Yeah. Which is absolutely awful if you're an artist, because the ideas keep coming, but you can't really get them on paper because your hand keeps cramping up and hurting. So I did some intensive therapy, did some sculpting, which actually helps really good if you're looking for a way to relieve any pain from carpal tunnel and stuff like that. I would recommend trying to sculpt because you have to knead the clay and it has different movements. It worked for me. Maybe it works for you as well. Pro tip. Pro tip. But for me as well, I hadn't drawn in like 9 months, I think. And it's all of a sudden, it's so scary to get back into the groove because you've been unable to create for such a long time. And it's scary because you're like, you see everybody doing all these epic pieces and you're like, do I remember how to draw? And I had no jobs lined up. I basically thought my career is over before it even started. And I thought like, I wanted to say the F word, but I'm not like...
You can.
Fuck it. I'm going to do what I love to do.
Right.
I stopped trying to fit into this idea of what art directors may or may not want me to do. So let's just do this. I saw these hashtags. I'm like, hey, mermaids. Why not? Let's just think of one mermaid every single day for the month of May, like one idea, but make it different. And my challenge to myself was, I do not wish to paint the mermaids as we know them, like the beautiful ladies with the long blonde hair or whatever, or even red hair like Disney. I wanted to paint mermaids, draw mermaids, create mermaids that were based in this hostile environment and had to rely on several traits to keep alive. And I started on Instagram with 1,000 followers in May 2016, and I'm now at 50,000 followers. And I saw my Instagram grow like in the space of 2 months into like 15,000, I guess.
Oh, wow.
It exploded. Just by daily posting, just one post a day of one sketch, it exploded. I hear a lot of people like, oh, it's not perfect. I can't post this because it's not finished. I posted failures. I posted everything I did. I did that day. I posted it because I don't believe there's failures. I believe that there's tries. And your failure might be a trial for a new piece, or it's the first version. There's no failure. It's a sketch. And I just took out the expectation of creating this awesome epic piece, and just my goal was one sketch a day, and a sketch. And that could be an elaborate sketch or even just a doodle. It needed to be finished every single day before 9 p.m. in the evening in the Netherlands. And I posted with a little bit of a backstory about the creature, and that's it. And then June Fae hit, and I did the same thing. And my Instagram kept growing and growing. So for me, that was the biggest thing. I found this audience that liked what I was doing, and more importantly, I liked what I was doing. I took away the expectations that I thought people were having and just had fun.
That's all you can do is just have fun. And I like that idea of not calling them failures, but calling them tries. And I think that for people, that's great advice to post things anyway. Post them as tries. Call it a sketch, call it a try, call it an attempt. Or kind of explain your thought process like you did, and that can kind of wean you off of this perfectionism that I think plague a lot of people from posting a lot of the stuff that they do create, and this idea that it has to be perfect.
To be honest, for me, the tries are more important and more interesting than the finished pieces. I love looking through sketchbooks from artists because you actually get this glimpse into their world, in their mind. You can see their whole thought process, and maybe somebody isn't a good a sketcher as they are with their final piece. The final piece will look awesome and amazing, but they spent 2 weeks on that. And that sketch took 5 minutes, but that sketch has all the rawness, all the directness, and all the honesty in there. It is the first idea. It's literally the first idea. It's like a baby. It's new. It's just been born. And it's more interesting. But what I often ask people, hey, can I see a sketchbook? And if they ask me, I gladly give them my sketchbook to look through. And there's a lot of failures in there, like failures between brackets. Yes, they're not perfect. The anatomy might be off, but who cares? It's about the idea. It's not about how perfect my anatomy is. You can get perfect, or you can become perfect in a later stage, but now the idea is so much more important. And I call my sketchbook my playground. That's my playground. I can do anything I want. There's no restrictions. There's no laws. It's just me, the paper, my pencil, and an eraser, and just have fun with it and just see what pops up. And in the last year, I filled 25 sketchbooks.
Woo!
I sketch a lot. I haven't been sketching a lot these days because I've been working on my book, but I sketch a lot, and not all of it is awesome, but I keep them all as well. I've seen people that just rip them up and just take whatever they think is interesting, but I found that when I look back through my sketchbooks of 5 years ago, there will be ideas I thought that were unusable or not uninteresting back 5 years ago. And now I'm ready to tackle them because I now think, hey, there's something in there. What if I change this and do this? It'll be awesome. So I tend not to throw away my sketchbooks because you never know what's hidden back there and you're not ready to see. So for me, they're my playgrounds. They are my idea generators. If I am low on ideas, I just flick through a sketchbook and I have 20 ideas instantly. You get this, it's like a visual notebook. I read my stories in one sketch. So I don't know if it makes sense, but for me, sketchbooks are very important. And I hope people will stop apologizing for the state of their sketchbook, that not every page is filled with awesome, that not every page is looks like a Michelangelo did it or whatever. Because to face it, you're not Michelangelo. You're not Leonardo da Vinci. You're just you. And your ideas are amazing. And be proud to show off your ideas. And yeah, for me, sketchbooks, show them readily, show them with pride, show them without apology.
Yeah, I love that idea of this theme of making your art more kind of casual and making it more for yourself and not being afraid to share it, because I think that it's kind of a disease that I think in this social media era that we have of this kind of perfect life, whether it's art or your life, or it's just sharing the perfect thing. And I think that you are kind of battling against that. And I think people need to do that to show the quote tries, the things that didn't quite work, and explaining that story so that it maybe gives other people courage to do the same, and to show that, everybody has these flaws, or everybody has these mistakes or bad days or attempts, and to kind of promote that atmosphere.
Yeah. And you'll see as soon as you do, all the other artists will say, oh yeah, I do the same thing, and they all have the same problems. It's stop lying to yourself. You're okay. You don't get out of bed with your makeup on and your hair done and exactly your beard is shaven all of a sudden. That's not happening. If it was, it would be a time saver and it would be awesome because we had more time to create art, but it is not life. And art, I see art as life as well. For me, art is life. I need it. It's like breathing. It's like eating. I need it. But it's not perfect. And that's okay. Because if it's perfect, it's boring.
Exactly.
Perfection is boring for me. This is just my personal opinion. It could be technically perfect and it's amazing and it's hats off to you. You're awesome. But rawness. I enjoy raw lines, smudges, wrinkles, whatever works, whatever floats your boat. It's good enough.
Whatever floats your boat. I love it. Well, I definitely wanted to touch on the idea of not ripping up your sketchbook. Or for me as a writer, I would have like I have a quote sketchbook too, like an idea document where I write down all these ideas. And sometimes I look back, I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, what is this? This is garbage. But I got out of the habit of deleting that. And putting it in a different ideas folder, maybe one that's like an incubation stage for me to look at 5 years later when I'm ready for that idea, or that idea makes more sense, instead of just deleting it forever. I'm a big proponent of writing down all your ideas and kind of storing them away, squirreling them away, and not deleting it and worried about, you dying and somebody finding this terrible idea that you had.
Hey, but if it happens, like if that happens, something tells me that if you're this big shot writer and you die and people find these manuscripts, they still love it because it's you.
Right.
Who cares? And you're doing the same thing as I'm doing. It's just you keep your ideas because you never know what's hidden back there, what brilliance there is, or that a sentence can jumpstart a whole story, a whole novel. Just one sentence in a pile of shit can start this amazing book. And it's the same with art. It's just one little doodle on the edge of a paper can just be the next best thing that might get chosen to be in Spectrum or wins all these prizes. You never know.
You never know. Yeah, so stop sheltering yourself from your bad work.
Yeah, absolutely, and accept it because it's part of you, and it's at that moment it is you. And basically, if you factor in that, I'm planning to live to 111, so I'm now 39, so I still have a long life ahead of me. So there's going to be a lot of bad art, but also some good art. And the day I die is the day I stop learning. So imagine hitting your peak right now. That would be awful, because what are you going to do with the rest of your life if you knew that this is it, this is your best time? That's just, I hate that idea. I just want to continue to learn and evolve. And like if you do daily sketches, you'll see results in such a quick tempo. It's like if every single day there's always half an hour to sit down and sketch. You use the bus or the train to go to your work. You sit on the toilet quite regularly. Have a sketchbook there. Have a notebook there. Instead of scrolling through Facebook, just do a sketch. Nobody knows you did that on the toilet. Unless you tell them.
Right. Yeah. I like that idea though of finding those microseconds, finding that time. Everybody complains about not having time, but you can find those little moments where you are like you are actually wasting time just looking through, like literally scrolling through Facebook, not looking for a particular thing, but kind of looking.
We all do it. There's no sense in saying that you don't, because we do. And just keep a timer next to your computer and time yourself how much time you actually waste doing that, because it's a lot. It really is a lot, and it's such a shame. And you could have been using that time to draw that sketch. It isn't that difficult. You just need to be aware of your habits and change them.
Right, and then don't accidentally sit on the toilet for way too long because you're in a good sketch.
Yeah, keep a timer then.
Right.
Again, time your toilet visits.
Oh, that would be too much pressure for me. Well, I wanted to take it back just to the sculpting.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've continued now?
Yeah.
And what has that done for your actual art?
I started doing my own frames, sculpting my own frames, because I found that I couldn't find the frames I really wanted to have for my pieces. And I feel a frame continues telling the story of the piece that's in there. And frames are expensive, like really expensive. I'm not saying sculpting your own frames is very inexpensive, because it's probably more expensive than buying them. But it's also very a lot of fun because it's just a one-off. That's a piece of art in itself. But I also do sculptures of my creatures. I'm just having a blast of creating these creatures in 2D and then creating them 3-dimensional. Yeah, I'm figuring out how to incorporate that into my art business. Maybe do figurines, maybe do toys or whatever comes. It's another way of expressing myself as a creative, as an artist. It might not work for everybody, but for me, it really works to get my head into the game. If I'm burnt out by one medium, I just move on to another and do that for a while, and just it also informs me. Like if I sculpt, I look at things differently, and I use that in my 2-dimensional paintings as well, because I sculpt, I have this dimensional vision of how things should look or how things should be in their environment. And it makes it easy. So these different media give you information that you can incorporate in each other, if that makes sense, actually. But the way lighting works on 2D, in 2D is easily figured out on a 3D model, for instance. It's a new way of thinking, looking at things, and also it's a new avenue to pursue and just have fun.
Right. Not only being able to look at it in a different way and make your brain think about things in a different way, but I'm sure that feeling your art must be a different experience as well.
Yeah. Well, for me, when I paint, I only paint digital. Traditionally, I suck at digital. I am terrible at it. I'm just a dinosaur. I used to say, digital is fake, blah, blah, hold the thing. But that's not true. It's another medium. And for me, that's the medium. I have no feeling there. So it's just a screen for me. And I need the smell of paint. I need the tactile, the feeling of paint. I need to have, if you see me after I finish the painting, I'll be covered in paint. And I love it. For me, that works. And other people just don't. They hate it. But yeah, 3D, there's a really gratifying way of just working with your hands and manipulating this material into a shape. And you see this creature emerging from this block of goo, basically. Yeah, it's so easy because you can build and then think, hey, this doesn't work. You can just tear it up and change it again, which is amazing. Whereas watercolors, for instance, you have to think ahead of time. What am I going to do? How is this going to look? Every action has a consequence. So I've had to scrap pieces so often because I made a wrong decision at the end or a wrong decision at the beginning, that things just didn't work out and I had to begin again. Whereas oil paints are almost like sculpting. It's just, okay, it's oil paint. If it doesn't work, just scrape it off and start again. So it's just different media have different rules, or it's not really rules, are just ways of working. And you can apply all these rules to each and every media. And if you know how oils work, you can use that knowledge in watercolors as well, and vice versa, even though it's different. But there's knowledge you can use because the basic knowledge is basically the same.
Well, I wanted to end this by talking about Faeries of the Faultlines, because this is something that you've got going on literally right now.
Yeah.
So could you talk about the process of creating that book?
Yeah. Well, obviously it started after June Fate 2016. I had all these fairies created, and people were asking me, well, what you're going to do with it now? Are you going to make a book? And the more people asked about it, I'm like, maybe I should do a book. Why not? And it's that scary because, Kickstarters are, if you you're asking for a lot of money. Like I needed 15,000 euros to have 500 copies made and shipped. And I thought, like, that's never going to happen. 15,000 euros. I've never seen that amount of money ever. But, well, I made that amount of money in 48 minutes after launch.
Woo!
Yeah. So imagine, I was crying. It was an ugly cry. It was so ugly. But I was so happy.
Can you reenact that for us?
Yeah, well, I think it's up on my Facebook. If you really want to see it,
yes.
You should go and check June 2017, 21st of June 2017. You'll find the ugly cry.
You know I'm going to link that up.
Yeah, post the link. Now, it's I never knew it would be that big of success. In the end, I have to print 2,500 books, and I set out to print 500. So many more, and I have to sign and sketch like 600 books, which is kind of a lot. And I'm getting nervous now because it's like 600 sketches in a month, hopefully. Might take a little longer, I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. But, well, let's go back to the beginning. I set the launch date for 21st of June 2017, which is Midsummer Night. I did some promo work beforehand. I started doing promo like 6 months in advance, 9 months even. So well in advance, so people knew Faeries of the Faultlines was a thing, and everything I posted, Faeries of the Faultlines, Faeries, coming in June. So I think I created some anticipation, like this is happening, this is a thing. And I had already asked Brian Froud if he could maybe write an intro for me, and he was delighted to do so. He said he loved my art, and if anything, that's like getting the stamp of approval of the godfather of fairy. It's like, that's big. And another ugly cry was when I actually read the intro he wrote for me, and it's like, oh, that's my hero saying that about my work. It's, oh, I can die now. Well, I'm not going to die, but...
Not till 111.
Yeah, 111. And, the launch day, that was it was nerve-wracking because Kickstarter, it's so weird because you have to factor in the shipping cost way ahead, and you never know how well your Kickstarter is going to do. You're bound to these shipping companies, which we all know that shipping something abroad is expensive. Like if you order from Amazon, it's cool. You have free shipping. That's great. But if you support a Kickstarter, nobody can offer you free shipping. It's not going to happen. And shipping anything to the States from the Netherlands, it's like 30 euros at least. And if you have a book that's 35 euros, that's like a lot of money that's not spent on the book. So you end up with this hugely inflated goal, because your shipping cost have to be incorporated in that goal. And you think, that's never going to happen. It's insane. And, well, obviously it did. And we ended up with 111,000 euros and over 2,000 books sold. And the idea was a book that was 128 pages, and I ended up with 168 pages. 8 of those are, there's a big fold-out page in the middle of the book, which is like a really big spread. It's got linen-bound cover, gold foil. It's like the best quality I could get. Obviously, being a graphic designer, having experience in designing books, and I'm working with a local printer instead of working with a printer in, for instance, China, which could potentially be a lot cheaper. But I have no control over that. I can't go to the presses and just look whilst the book is actually being printed. And this is what I can do now. I can keep tabs on the printing process, which is for me very important, because It's never been about making money for me. It's always been about the book being the best book I can offer my backers, because I appreciate their support. I think they deserve a product that shows love for the book, but also for this world I created. Ideally, I hope it will become this book that can stand next to Faeries by Brian and Alan. That would be a dream come true. I've been working on getting the book done, editing, because I'm not a native speaker. I have to have an editor that really goes through this whole text of mine with a fine comb and get all these weird Dutch sayings out of it, like remove them. Nobody's gonna understand these. This is not English. Okay.
Right.
And shipping has been hell, because the shipping company I was going to work with changed not only their rates, they also changed their agreement one-sided, meaning that I would pretty much be bankrupt if I went ahead with them. So I had this, I had to find a new shipper with the same budget, and that was nerve-wracking. And it took me, I think, a month or something to figure that out and sort that out. I'm doing this all on my own. This is just one person doing this. So I'm doing everything from marketing to design, artwork, story, logistics, shipping, packaging. Obviously, I'll get some help packaging, but I'm the one having to sign the books and doing everything basically. But I also like the idea of physically holding every single book in my hands before I send it off to its new home.
Right.
Because it's like giving your baby away.
Yeah.
I'm handing out 2,000 babies to their adoptive parents. It's awesome. It is, but it's stressful. And I've been working 14-hour days, I guess, this past couple of 6 months. Yeah, something like that.
Ooh.
Yeah. Hard work.
But worth it?
Very worth it. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say 14 hours is worth it, because obviously that has a toll on your health, which is not worth it. And I see a lot of artists say, like, very proud of pulling all-nighters and stuff like that, which is awesome when you're young, if you can do that. And they basically live off caffeine. But I've just recently had a really big health scare, and I developed some problems with my heart due to stress and obviously genetics. But it is a factor that it is work, but you need to take care of yourself as well. So as an artist, you might know as well, if you're working, you're in the flow, and it's so difficult to step away from that table or your computer and just go out and walk. And you begin your day at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you find yourself 8 o'clock in the evening and you still haven't eaten. And that's just silly. That's just not taking good care of yourself. And yeah, I did that. That's not my best side. It's not my best decision ever.
Right. Yeah, you got to take care of number one.
Got to take care of yourself, because otherwise you won't be able to keep creating. And just pace yourself. Be careful. Be mindful. Just go out, have a walk. If it's not working, if the work isn't working, just step away. Do something different, totally different, and come back to it with fresh pair of eyes, and it'll be so much better. Set a timer. Kitchen timer works the best. Just a couple of bucks and you're set.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of time, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so we will get to the final push.
Yeah.
And this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today, and just give them your best final words of advice and push them to pursue their own creative passions.
Oh, that's a tough one, because I think everybody should just do what they feel is right for them. But main thing is just stop giving a fuck about what other people think and say or want you to do. Listen to yourself. You know best what you want to do. If that's doing comics, go for it. If that's doing paint fairies, go for it. Most importantly, be you. Be sure that you are in the art and you'll do the best pieces there are. Yeah, maybe you're not going to be chosen to be in Spectrum. Who cares? Doesn't devalue your art. Just have fun. Have fun. You've got the best job in the world, and have fun with it. Don't hate it.
Iris, thank you so much for coming on the show today, for sharing your story, and for inspiring all of us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And you can find Iris on our website, which is iris.eu. That's EYERIS.eu. On Instagram, she is Iris Compiet. And on Twitter, she is Art of Iris, EYERIS. And on Patreon, she is Iris Compiet. And we'll have all of that linked up at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Iris, IRIS. Iris, thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
My thanks again to Iris for coming on the show. I just wanted to really touch on this thing that I think that I need to start promoting a lot more. I would love to hear ideas from all of you as to how we can try to promote this movement of sharing your imperfections, of sharing your rough drafts, of sharing your mistakes, of sharing the ways that you went wrong, of being more vulnerable to your audience and promoting this imperfect atmosphere. Because like we were talking about on the show, I think it's a terrible thing, the fact that we, put all these filters on our pictures and make our lives look absolutely perfect, because it is not ever the truth. We are putting out a lie, because we all deal with hardships. We all deal with really difficult things that happen in our lives. And when our lives are that difficult and imperfect, and they have cracks and struggles and hardships, that's definitely going to seep into our art as well. And we all know how hard it is to be an artist, to be a creative person, and to put ourselves out there as honestly and as vulnerably as possible, to put that into our art. So it makes it that much more difficult when everybody else is sharing their absolute perfect, pristine things that they've created that have taken them hours and hours, and their perfectionism has gotten into them, and they just post them as if it took them a few minutes to make and everything came out perfectly, and there weren't 10 mistakes that they got thrown into the garbage and all of that stuff. We need to start sharing these imperfections and sharing how difficult it is to make some of these things that we make, and to get through our very difficult days just to get to those difficult projects that we struggle through. We need to start sharing these stories. That's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to kind of have this open dialogue, this open venue to share the fact that we all go through these things. But I think we all need to start doing this in our real lives and start to promote this atmosphere of imperfection. I don't know. I'm definitely interested in hearing what you all have to say, what we could maybe do, have some sort of hashtag or something, like hashtag imperfection or hashtag, I don't know. This is definitely one of those conversations I want to have on the Facebook group. So definitely go to yourcreativepush.com/group. I will have something tagged up there. Maybe Iris can join in the conversation, and we can all share ideas on how we can start being proud of sharing our mistakes, sharing our sketchbooks like Iris was talking about, of sharing those moments where the idea first comes to paper or whatever it is. The idea in its most raw form. I think that can definitely help to inspire other people who are maybe sleeper cells. They are people that aren't quite creating yet, but are afraid to start creating because of the fact that all they see when they're looking up other artists and stuff is these perfect finished copies of stuff. And there's a long journey that they know that they have to go through in order to get to that point, but they're too frightened or too maybe lazy even to get to that final point. So start being kind of a beacon of light to the other people, the other sleeper cells, the other potential artists, potential creative people around you that can find inspiration from you. You can definitely be a teacher, and you can be a vulnerable teacher that shares some of your mistakes and some of your imperfections or some of your rough drafts. And I think that also doing that will help you selfishly as well, because then by sharing some of your soul in that way, some of your mistakes, you'll be more apt, or you'll be more comfortable making future mistakes, taking more chances, and maybe not being as much of a perfectionist, so that you'll be willing to stop a project when you know it's done instead of continually working on it, and it will make you share more work and move on to more projects. Just something to think about, and I would love to hear your input. Even if you're not part of the Facebook group yet, please come on in and join at least in that conversation. I'm very interested to see what you have to say. On our next episode, we have Amber Ray. Amber is an author, artist, and speaker whose work invites you to live with your truth, to befriend your emotions, and to express your gifts. Her new book is called Choose Wonder Over Worry, which I read and was super inspiring for me, not only as a creative person, but as somebody who is about to write a book about the same thing. She is super honest and open about that whole process and the things that have held her back in her entire creative life, but also in writing this book. If you want to find out more about Amber, you can head to her website, choosewonder.com, or you can head to today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/288, where I'll have that linked up as well as everything we talked about with Iris. But that's all I've got for you today, so hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done. So go and get it done, and we will be here for you next week if you need that push again. Go and get some amazing work done. I love you all, and we will see you next time. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.